Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. It's like my third DevFest in Prague in a row. And actually, this time with little difference. I moved to Prague like already 5 months ago. So now it's like more convenient to take just a bus 20 minutes and I'm here and not spending hours in the plane and layovers. So today my topic is about web accessibility. And before I start, let's make a quick quiz. Who is aware about web accessibility and knows how to implement it? Can you raise your hand? OK, fair enough. So according to the Cambridge Dictionary, accessibility is some opportunity to use, reach, understand something. And we see it a lot nowadays in our world, like, for example, wheelchair ramps for the buses, or the wheelchair ramps for the buildings, shops, etc. Actually, I made this photo 2 days ago in Prague. But here's the question, like, why not that to make websites accessible the same way? Good question, right? And do you know this website? I feel so much pain when I use it. Like, I really like to watch movies, but it's not responsive at all, and I have to zoom it to, firstly, to select appropriate language, then I have to zoom in to find a movie I want, and then you just filter out the city. So I would like to filter out the location first, and then to see which are movies available at that location, right? So you might also felt the same feeling of frustration when you use this website or any other, when you are trying to buy some tickets, to book hotels. And with time to time, occasionally, we faced such websites which are not user-friendly, and we have this pain. But for other people who have some impairments or disabilities, this is like the often feeling, and you can get the idea how hard it is. So what is actually web accessibility? The original definitions states that people with disabilities can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web. But I actually changed this definition from people to disabilities to everyone, that everyone can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web. And web accessibility has 4 core principles. Perceivable. The users must have, the users must have opportunity to perceive information presented on the website. Do you hear me? Yes? OK, I felt like I got lost. And so if you're deaf and there is some video on the website, you still have possibility to perceive this information using captions. Operable. So there are users who don't like to use mouse, or there are users who actually can't use mouse. And they still should have possibility to make the same operations and to navigate through your website just using the keyboard. Understandable. The content and operation on it is fully understandable and performed in predictable ways. So if there is a buy button, and user clicks on buy button, he just goes directly to the page where he can buy this good, but nothing in between that makes confusion. And robust. So users are using different user ranges, devices, and devices are changing fast from the time technologies evolve, but the content still should remain accessible. And why actually this is important? So when we usually start to build some application, we are figuring out what the problem we are trying to solve. And we are assuming that all our users are fully abled, and it's like not really true. For example, you're building a photo app, and you might think, why would the blind person would even want to use my app? Like, because he can't see it. Well, still even the blind person wants to get some photos and share them on social media, share them with their friends, because like everyone else, everyone has the same goals, whether to send an email, whether to post something on social media, whether to buy tickets, buy something on Amazon. Like, everyone has the same goals. And I really love this quote from Tim Berners-Lee, who is W3C director and inventor of World Wide Web. So he thinks that the power of the web is in its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect, and I really support this quote. Everyone can benefit from accessibility. So, like, all of you sitting here in this room are getting aged, and at some point in our life, we will get lower vision, we will get hard of hearing, and all of us will need, at some point of our life, to use some website, and we will need it to be accessible. Did you know that 20% of people worldwide have some kind of disability or impairments? And it's actually 1 billion people. And it's actually every 6th person worldwide. Quite significant number, agree? And to give you more statistic, American Institute of Research recently made a great report. So working-age people with disabilities in USA bringing along income like $21 billion. And you may also think about their friends and family who are using some application to interact with them. So, regarding to the recent research, people with disabilities, their friends and family worldwide have a collective disposable income like $8 trillion. Think about it. And I'll give you more statistic. 71% of users with disabilities, they just click away from the website, which has some accessibility barriers. And they're just passing $12 billion income to the other accessible websites. So just us to think what we create, it is useless if it's not accessible. And also, to know our users better, we should also be aware of what kind of disabilities exist. So there are like 4 main types. Visual is the range of people from low vision to the totally blindness. Auditory, from the hard of hearing to deaf. Motor and mobility impairments, it's even the person who has injured the wrist or broken arm or has some paralyzed body. Cognitive and intellectual impairments, it includes like different disabilities, like disability with memory, with development skills, logical skills. And I also want you to consider these 3 people. A boy in a wheelchair, a girl with a broken arm, and a woman with a bag of groceries. So let's play a quick show of hands. Who of them has a limited mobility? Raise your hand if you think it's a boy in a wheelchair. Raise your hand if you think it's a girl with a broken arm. And raise your hand if you think it's a woman with a bag of groceries. If you raise your hand 3 times, you are correct. All of them have some relation to limited mobility, whether it's permanent or temporary or situational. Did you have experience like having the bag and on the other hand you are trying to type something on the phone, like a bit uncomfortable, right? So it happens. And this is just, I want us to think about that accessibility applies for everyone. People with disabilities use different assistive technologies to improve interaction with the web. It can be software or hardware. There can be like braille terminals that helps blind people to interact with the web, or the screen magnifiers who zoom the text for the people with low vision. also the eye tracking devices, and different screen touch devices. And I guess all of you know that Steve Hawking, who had used a range of different assistive technologies. And screen readers. Screen readers are programs that speaks aloud the content on the screen. Especially it's very useful for blind people. And there are various types of them, like most popular are JAWS NVIDIA Narrator for the Windows, Orca for the Linux, VoiceOver for the macOS, and also there is Chromebox on the Chrome, and it works actually on any OS. But before we start our journey to implementing web accessibility, we should follow some guidelines to know some best practices. So all of you know the World Wide Web Consortium, which is more or less the government body of the web. They have created the Web Accessibility Initiative. And they created the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. So the WCAG, the last version 2.1, was published this June. It's kind of very rich guideline on accessibility. It can be a bit overwhelming because of the text, but it's very useful if you go from step by step and learn different use cases. And also, it is useful to know how actually Assistive Technologies works. So we have our application, and you know that the browser parses the website to the DOM tree. And at the same time, it parses the website to accessibility tree. An assistive technology like screen reader, it can consume this accessibility tree and translate it to the meaningful text for the blind person, for example. So, what about if you want to create a menu and menu bar? How actually tell the users that you're building a menu? Well, a bit tricky. You can use the UL element for the menu whole and the list items for the menu items and style it, but still the accessibility tree will have it as a list, and the assistive technology, like screen reader, it will read, okay, this is the list of 3 items, but this doesn't what we want to get, right? So what if there would be role menu and role menu item? Would it be great? Yes. But this actually exists, and this is called Y area. This is also a specification created by the W3C, and they're defining a set of additional HTML attributes that can be applied to the elements, and they're adding additional semantics to it, so they're actually improving accessibility where it is lacking. And ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. They also have the rich guideline with each attribute and different use cases where you can apply them. And I know this is a lot of overwhelming, but this is not just to know what are the standards. And to understand how the ARIA works, it just kind of augmented attributes which are added to the HTML, and they are improving this accessibility tree, which will bring more meaningful text to the users with disabilities. So as I said, ARIA is a way to add missing semantics, and there is 3 types of these attributes, like roles, like menu and menu item, states, like expanded, collapsed, and also properties which can describe the different characteristics of the element. And there are a lot of them. And I know this can be stressed out, but keep calm. We will go baby steps. First, declare the language. Declaring the language is not only useful for search engine optimization, and not only useful for translation tools, it's also useful as for assistive technologies. So you see, I made this paragraph in Czech. So when the screen reader will get to this paragraph, it will automatically switch the language to the Czech and pronounce it correctly. Second, use semantic HTML. everyone knows what it is. It's a teapot. Everyone knows how to use it. It has a handle. It has a lid. You know how to use it. You don't need to explain it to everyone. And this is what it's called affordance. And this is kind of metaphor I want to apply for the semantic elements. So there are semantic elements like button, headers, footer, and also non-semantic. So why to prefer to use semantic HTMLs? Like button. So we tend to make our button stylish with adding some shadow boxes, with making some 3D. But for blind and not blind users, they need the same. They expect the same. They want just to perform an action. They know that this is a button, and when I click on it, it performs an action. And the same screen reader, when it reads the elements, it knows that it is button, and it does some action. So I have a quick example. Here's the two buttons, which look the same. And for first one, if I navigate with screen reader to the first button, it will just say search. What the hell is search? Is it a text? Is it an input? Is it a button? I don't know. And this is because I use the div. And this is like a common technique when we are trying to create a button with div and style it and make it beautiful. And for the second button, it reads correctly, search button. Because I've used here the button semantic HTML. And I'll show you a quick example. So I will try now to navigate with screen reader to the first button and the second, just you to get the idea how does it work. So I will just activate this monster who speaks aloud.
Voiceover on Chrome, buttons valid versus invalid. Google Chrome, window, save, button, banner. You are currently on a button, frame 0, search button. You are save, button, banner.
Oh, cut.
Search button. You are current, search. You are current, search button. You search. You are currently on a text, voiceover off.
I just turn it off because it speaks a lot. But I hope you got the idea that it says search button for the right one and search for the left one. And this is not only the one advantage why to use semantics. So let me just to uncomment this JavaScript code. So now when I click on the button, I got some alerts for both of them. But when I'm on the semantic button, when I press space, it does the same action. And when I press enter, it does the same action, because it's the built-in functionality in the button. But when I try to do the same, it wouldn't work for the div. You have implement additional keyboard events handling for the div, so it will handle the same way. And for example, also you want to disable your button, so you will just add the attribute disable it to the both of them, and I start them to be gray. And when I click on this button, nothing happens, because the button, when it has the attribute disabled, it just blocks all events and all styles. But the div still works. So now you know that better to prefer to use semantics. And it's not only about like buttons. Semantics are also useful for navigation landmarks. So navigation landmarks, they're very efficient to show the organization and structure of your website. And screen readers, users reports when they, for first time, land on some unfamiliar page. For them, it's very useful to kind of grab the idea what is this website about, and it's like hard to scan all the elements. And for them, it's very useful on the screen reader activate such a pop-up which shows all the landmarks, so they can easily navigate from the banner, main navigation section, search section. It also can have like links and headings, so the user can easily navigate through it. And the main navigation landmarks are like header, footer, navigation, which contains different navigation links across the website, main contained, and a site tag, which has some additional information which is related to the website, but it can be some banner, etc. the third one, use tab key navigation and tab order. So what is this tab order? The order in which DOM elements receive focus when the user press tab key, it is called tab order. So I guess you are already trying to, on some website, to try tabbing, and the interactive elements will get focus. And this is actually about like native elements, like buttons, inputs, links. They by default getting focused. But what if like you're building some custom interactive control, and for the user who are using the keyboard, he still should have possibility to navigate to this interactive control by keyboard and get the focus and interact with it. So for that goal, you need to use tab index. And when you set tab index equals 0, the custom control will be inserted into the native tab order. And it also will get these focusable behaviors that you can programmatically call the method focus, and it will get focused. And I want to show you some bad practices, what not to use to not corrupt the focus on your website. So let me switch quickly. So I don't know if you can see it properly. I probably need to zoom it. So as you see, I have paragraphs, and I put tab indexes for them, tab index 0. Actually, this is not what you're going to do in real world, because tab indexes just need to be put on the interactive elements. And when I press tab, 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 so you see I'm getting the tab order from left to right, from up to down. And also shift tab, I'm going back. But this is like very often used technique to make the float right. And what happens? Like my first paragraph went to the end. So visually, the order has changed, but the DOM stayed the same. And if I click the tab now, it will go to the end here. If you can see it properly. And it will go, then it will go here and here. So the tab order has changed, and it works like not as expected. So if you want to change the order, change also the physical order of the DOM. So the tab order will stay consistent. And one more example with button. I have here like very beautiful styled button. And when we focus on it, it gets this focus ring, the blue one. And often in front-end world, like developers say, I don't like this focus ring, it's not beautiful, I will just remove it. And they put the outline none on that button. And I click on it, it like doesn't have this focus ring. But when user using keyboard and tabbing, he will never get to the button. He will never get to focus it with keyboard. So if you don't like this focus blue ring, don't remove it, just style it like I style it. Isn't it beautiful? But actually, you can style it properly with good design, right? So just keep it in mind. So the first step is about using wide area attributes. So in second step, we covered that better to use semantics. But there are cases when you're building some custom controls and where you actually can like explain the user what is this. So for that cases, use area attributes. And I explain you why. I have also this like similarly looking buttons with like trash can. And you see it, if you click on it, you will delete something. But let's try the first one with screen reader. It will say button. Wow, success. What is this button will do? I don't know. And this is because this time I did a good job. I used the button element, but it doesn't have any text. I just style it to have this trash icon, and that's it. So screen reader doesn't know that this is like delete button, and it just reads button. And for another case, it reads correctly delete button, because I improved it a bit, and I used area label delete. So area label is like one of the area attributes which add additional description to the elements, so now it works correctly. And the same as I had an example with menus, like use area to improve accessibility in your website. The 5th, control focus with keyboard. So just imagine you have some list on a website, like selectable list, and it's very long list. It's very, very long list. Do you want your user to tap all this list down and shift them back and shift up to the other elements? It can take like enormous time. It can be just annoying, you know? So never do that. Instead of that, just use JavaScript to control the focus by navigating like up and down arrow keys, and use the tab to navigate through like up-level sections. So the user will just tap through the up-level sections, and when he arrives on the list, he can go inside and just use arrows to navigate the list. And the last but not least, keep color contrast. So the color is a very important thing on your website. It brings some mood and some intent to your users. But it should be also keep some color contrast ratio for the persons to understand what is written there. And this is a standard for small text, 4:5:1, and for large text, 3:1. But you will say, what is the clue about these numbers? How I can check actually this like ratio or what it is about? So there are like many things you can do. Firstly, I'll have the same button, but I will make it gray. And I will get some light gray color in it. And if you like inspect it, and I click this color text, and you see this, oh, it's off. So you see this contrast ratio, like warning, like error, that you should improve your contrast ratio. Is this like one of the way how to check it? Also, there is a very great website called webaim.org. It's Web Accessibility in Mind. This is a great website. They have like a bunch of different resources and training about web accessibility. So I just checked like this light gray text on the dark gray background, and it failed. And also, if you just improve a bit your text and make it lighter, it looks good, and the test passed. Isn't it beautiful? I love it. It's so cool, no? These colors is so like, I know, bright, but always keep in mind the color blindness. So for example, there are people who have red-green color blindness, so when there is green text on a red background, they would just see gray. They wouldn't read anything. It would be just gray title. So keep it in mind. And like when you're designing a website, just pick some main colors like background, foreground, and accent colors. And this is kind of example which colors are used in this presentation. And of course, after implementation of web accessibility, it's also important to test it. And there are a bunch of tools like Axe, Pave, and Lighthouse, which are the browser extensions. And Lighthouse is actually also available on the DevTools in the Audits tab. And the Axe Core is a great library for automated testing. So if you wanted to add to your CI builds and to check all the time if you haven't broken your accessibility, it's a great library to use. And of course, some manual work. So as I said before, like for many people don't use mouse or they can't use mouse, but still they should be possible to navigate through your website with just keyboard. So just take a keyboard and try and navigate to your website. Do you still can have the same operation? Do you can get the same result just from keyboard? Download the screen reader. Grab your sleeping mask, move to the trash mouse, and just try to go to the Google search. How far will you get? How quickly you can get the results? And one more great extension is called No Coffee. That's to test different color effects, to test like screen blur. So you can check if all focuses are visible and actually it still has some meaning to users with low vision. And I know this was like a lot of overwhelming information, but keep calm. And I know that implementing accessibility is hard, and as far you get, the harder it gets. And for example, for cases where you just can't make some element accessible, look for alternatives, like how you can give the same information to the user, but in an alternative way. Just think about it. And remember that small changes make big difference. Whether you change all your divs to the semantic buttons, or you add some additional area attributes to your HTML, it's already a big difference for someone. And here I want to share like a bunch of great resources, like Udacity course about web accessibility. It is free. Also, there is a cool guide on Chrome developers, accessibility fundamentals that are covering the key points on it. And the website I mentioned before is called Web Accessibility in Mind, and they have a great checklist, so you can just take your website, take a checklist, and cross what you comply and what you don't. Also, the Y area specification, WCAG guideline, and the last one is the cool videos on the YouTube with Rob Dodson on the Chrome Developers channel. This is like around 30 videos, up to 10 minutes, but they're covering like a lot of topics on accessibility. And the best tip I want to finish this presentation, start all your new projects with accessibility in mind, because design is always cheaper than redesign and often is more effective. And I want to say that actually good accessibility, it equals good user experience. So now it's your turn. I wanted you to be aware about accessibility, and now you need to start somewhere. So every change you make to make your website more accessible is like already a big step to make your product user-friendly for all users. So set the standard in your industry and keep accessibility top of mind. So in every project you create, in every redesign you make, this is your turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sofiya. And let's see the questions that there are for you. So how website H11 is certified? How do users know that the site is accessible for everyone?
Users just go to this website and check, is it accessible? Because there is no any certification, that user can go to the website and see, okay, this website is HTTP secured, but this is not what is for accessibility. It's just try and fail for users with disabilities. And also, probably the question also was somewhere or SEO, yes. So if your website is accessible, the search engine optimization also works better for it. So the search engines, they just rank your web page better when it's more accessible. If using a tag as button better than using button tag, yes, it is. So reason you can style it, and actually it brings the same, but still you have to handle that when you enter it, you should do event prevent default to not re-render your page, and well, it brings additional complexity. But if you need to use an anchor element, you can't use it because you still have the possibility to enter and space to activate it. But the other things that you will need to use area labels or role to say that this is button, because for screen reader, this is link. So like you'll have to make additional changes. So that's why just keep with simple button because it simplifies things. Spaces or tabs?
No, that's not for you probably.
This one I answered, and
yeah, imagine a startup. When is it the right time to do accessibility? I heard that you said that from the start of the project you should think about this, but really even for startups?
yes, it's very tricky question. And usually when the people are building startups, they like don't have time to think even about like great architecture of the product. They just want as much as possible to get some like workable prototypes that they can present. And I know this is like very hard to do that. And well, it's important. But on the startup stage, I agree that people omit this because they don't have time for it. But anyway, after your startup, get to some stage where you know that you're going to iterate it and you're knowing that you're getting better. At some stage, start thinking about accessibility and you'll get more time.
So you should be prepared to do it maybe even later.
Sorry?
So you should be prepared to do it even maybe later, but
Yes.
prepared and have it in mind.
Yes, and actually it's hard to start, but when you learn it, after that it's going very fast to just adding few things like attributes and etc. It's already in your mind and you know that, okay, I'll use button for that, not like other elements.
Okay. This one we already answered. So, what if I use transparency on my text? Let's say opacity is 80%. Does DevTools compute correctly the contrast ratio against background?
Actually, I haven't checked this. Well, the good question, but I totally know that there are like in the browsers that I showed you the tools, and they check the accessibility, and they will also check the contrast, so you will see if it's compliant or not. But I think for opacity it wouldn't work because it just checks the color of the foreground and background.
So we have to think about it ourselves. Good. This one we already said, right? What about single-page apps accessibility? I guess a lot of JS is bad. Do you think that's true?
No, not at all. Like, actually, I was building one single-page application on Polymer, and if I used Polymer, and they already have the built-in accessibility in their components, but it's still not perfect. But, well, I don't say it's true, because if you really want to make it accessible, you just do it, and I don't see any reason for that, right?
Yeah, if it's single or not, right?
But bad JS code exists everywhere, whether is this site accessible or not. Believe me.
True. So which screen reader would you recommend? I know you mentioned a few.
So
Do
it
you have a
also
favorite?
depends on the operation system you use. On macOS, I use VoiceOver, which is integrated, and I gave you an example with VoiceOver, but I showed you also the populars on Windows, like JAWS, it's very popular. And the Chromebox is also very popular because it's in Chrome, and you can use it whenever you want, like in any operation system, but still you can check the Mozilla or Internet Explorer. Who actually need to check it on Internet Explorer? Well.
And last one, how does web accessibility translate to mobile responsiveness?
So, responsiveness is very important because users also on mobile use, it's called TalkBack. It's kind of screen reader on the phone. and the user still should be able to press with the button, like with the finger on the buttons. It should be big. It's the first one. And the navigation should be like into meaningful order. Like you can just have, for example, user go and just on the top you have buy button, but you don't know what you're buying, and you have to go down and you read what it is. Because I actually saw that in many websites when they put like buy button on the top and buy button on the bottom, and then in the middle somewhere is the explanation what it is. Like for users who don't use screen reader, they just like very fast swipe this and they see what it is about. But for screen reader users, it should be in some meaningful way about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sofiya.
Thank you.